Daikin Malaysia has been experienced unparalleled growth and development in the country through the efforts of bringing cooling comfort into millions of Malaysian homes. Being the world's first to assemble the HVAC system, Daikin has refined the VRV system to be a home central air conditioning system that transformed the lifestyle of discerning Malaysians. Daikin.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Shift 2022. We have now come to our final speaker of day 2. Let me first introduce the speaker. James Shen is the principal and founding partner of People's Architecture Office, Beijing. He received his Master of Architecture from MIT and a Bachelor of Science in Product Design from California State University, Long Beach. He is currently a Senior Research Fellow at the Harvard Joint Center for Housing Studies. Shen was a Loeb Fellow at Harvard and an Innovation Fellow at MIT's China Future City Lab. He has also taught at MIT School of Architecture and Planning and Harvard's Graduate School of Design. People's Architecture Office is an international practice with offices based in Beijing, China, and Boston, USA. Founded in 2010 by James Shen, He Zhi, and Zhang Feng, the firm is a multidisciplinary studio focused on social impact through design, particularly in areas of housing, urban regeneration, and education. People's Architecture Office is the first architecture firm certified as a B Corporation in Asia and serves as a model social enterprise. Domus named People's Architecture Office as one of the world's best architecture firm of 2019, and Fast Company listed People's Architecture Office as one of the world's 10 most innovative architecture companies in 2018. The studio's award-winning works have been exhibited at the Venice Architecture Biennale, Harvard Graduate School of Design, and the London Design Museum. Without further ado, let us invite James Shen to the stage.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for sticking around to the end. I'm actually very grateful for being here. Excited that I was invited, and after seeing all of the other presenters talk, I really feel that I'm not going to be saying anything new. You won't be hearing any new ideas. And I think that's a very good thing because that means I'm very much aligned with the work of that you've already seen. But I think I will be presenting some variations on some of these common themes. So I wanted to start with just a picture of where I grew up. This is my parents' house. This is still not working, but anyways, does this work? No. But you can see this is the suburbs of, well, this is the suburbs of Los Angeles where I grew up. I was born in the US. And it's just an environment that's pretty devoid of life, I would say, very different from what I've seen in Kuala Lumpur. You know, just I just thought it was important to leave a bit of this context. On the other hand, our office in Beijing is in a very lively location, and the red dot is actually where our office is. It's a courtyard house, Siheyuan, in these Hutong areas, and you can see it's very close to Tiananmen Square and the Forbidden City up above. And here's a little video of what my office is like. It's a courtyard house that's about a couple hundred years old, and you know these Hutong areas are teeming with people and you know, activities, kids running around, and our courtyard is also a kind of space where we can gather and do things together. The only kind of model making we're doing is mostly in the computers, given the nature of our work. But we do a lot of hands-on work with full-scale prototypes that we like to keep doing. This is not a torture device, but it's an installation. We're constantly trying to do these things because we didn't, when we started our office, we didn't want to present a lot of renderings and ideas in a very kind of abstract form, but decided instead to use our hands and to make things and to engage with our surroundings. This is just a little project we did, an installation where we borrowed a couple of bikes. We tried this out and it kind of worked, and then we moved on from there. But a lot of our early work is rooted in this approach. So our courtyard is also a community space, similar, I would think, to Maki's office. And we'd have barbecues there and movies. There are a lot of kids in the neighborhood. They'll come by. We'll invite them, and they'll come by when we don't invite them. And we'll have singing and so forth. I should say that I founded this office with two partners, Zhang Feng, which is in the back here, and He Zhe, which is right here. He doesn't usually smoke, but he does in special occasions. And people love to just climb up to the roof and just hang out, and every once in a while we do some work. So to start with, I would say we try to approach architecture in terms of connecting with communities. We really do a lot of observation around our environment, and think of a lot of these ways that people have adapted their environment as a kind of a vernacular that has developed over time. So, for example, these pipes that you see, actually this was taken in Seoul, but you have this all over, and what it indicates is uses that were not pre-planned, right? Like a restaurant in the basement level on a rooftop or whatnot. In many projects, we'll take some of these observations and turn them into installations. So this is an intervention we did on an existing building for another area that is historic and had this regeneration project. And this was kind of a sort of an arts center. And we took this and attached these to the wall, but they're also in the interior of the building as furniture and on different levels, as well as in the basement. And these HVAC pipes or vents, they come prefabricated, and you can customize them, and you can find them anywhere, and they're inexpensive. So it was appropriate for this project. We actually only had 1 month from the very beginning to completing this installation. And so what happens here is this actually spells out the name of this area, Bai Ta Si. But it's not only a sign, but it also functions, some of these pipes function as periscopes that allow new visitors to the site to connect to some important landmarks in the area. This is the actual Bai Ta Si, which is a temple. And it's really, I'm actually very happy when I see people just kind of understanding how you can sort of interact with these. We don't have instructions, or we're not there to explain, but it's really nice to see that people kind of get what we're trying to do. And that's what I mean by this sort of vernacular that it takes a strange form, but at the same time it's familiar. It's actually common, and also it's a type of structure that is not considered very valuable. Usually something that you would put away in the back of a building, but in fact makes up much of our cities. The use of space, observing how people occupy space, is something that we're constantly fascinated with, very, very interested in. And it just doesn't take very much to be creative with how you can make a place your own. This is very common in the streets, just like what Zhou Jianmen mentioned in having life on the streets. That's very much how Beijing is, especially in the Hutong areas, which are these very narrow alleyways and residential areas. And so we also turned these pipes into street furniture, and it's just pleasant seeing people sort of interact with these installations. And I'm also very happy when they use them in ways we didn't expect as well. There's often kind of remnants of non-places that people will make their own. You have some bricks that maybe this is their grandmother, where she can sit and watch the kids playing with sand on some random street corner. But you just don't have so many public areas or playgrounds and those kinds of spaces in Beijing. Or it could be something as simple as a sewer cap that marks a game area for a few kids. This is just right outside our office. And I thought this was really interesting. It's just I don't know, maybe that had a tree here before, I'm not sure. But again, kind of an outlined area. Kids can kind of crawl around. I guess it marks it in a way where they understand that you should stay within here, while other people are kind of parking and getting in their cars, doing their own thing. And it looks like these people might not necessarily know each other either. So we'll take a lot of these ideas and these ways of these types of spaces and ways of gathering and incorporate them into projects like this. This is our social network factory. And you can see this is also a loop, and this is literally inspired by that picture. and as well as more pipes that we do. We do a lot of these pipes for some reason. And people will, it's a way for people to interact with each other and project their voices, or they might sing and they might bang on this. We actually had a musical troupe that was, they were drummers and they were performing by banging on this. Oh, and this is right next to Fumihiko Maki's only building in China. This is in Shenzhen. This is called the Design Society. And also, it's important for us that our spaces can be appropriated in many different ways. And another thing that really fascinates us is when space is used in a very flexible way, when uses change even just within the span of a day. So for example, I think this is probably something that people here would be familiar with, is these expandable canopies. I think I've seen some around here where at night they'll expand out, and basically tiny restaurants can take over additional space. And then during the day, they can close up and allow for cars to pass if it's necessary. But it's something that's informal and probably not entirely legal, but in a lot of these places, the police don't think it's a problem, and they just allow it. So for another project called the People's Canopy, we took these canopies. We went to one of these factories and found a way to add wheels on, the bicycle wheels onto these canopies, and turned it into a vehicle that you can cycle. This was for an arts organization, originally for an arts organization in the UK, and they commissioned us to design something that would connect different parts of the city, parts that they felt were lacking in connection. It was sort of a downtown area that was sort of in decline. These images are actually from another location in Leuven in Belgium. This is the city center. But here's a short video where you can see how this is used. Basically, it's kind of like a procession, and you have volunteers, residents in this community that will cycle from one place to another. And then when you get to your destination, it's set up for activities and events. And we've always used this with local government organizations or nonprofits for cultural events. And we've done this the first time was in Preston in the UK, and then we've continued to do this in other places as we find more and more people are interested in doing this. And what's interesting is, for example, in Leuven, they continue to use this for throughout several years, and allowed these to be lent out to other organizations that were interested in testing out how they might want to add an additional use to their space, or there were other locations where there wasn't a certain kind of programming, and they would bring this over there and to try that out. So there's this sort of urban prototyping was also an important use of these people's canopies. And along the lines of this kind of architecture that is flexible, sometimes mobile, can change over time, this project, the People Station, integrated a lot of these sort of earlier projects that we did, and was designed as a prefabricated building that could be taken down and moved to another location if necessary. So you can see that this was done on a parking lot, and the client actually wasn't sure if this was something that they could do as a permanent building or not, but we built it as it could last, it could be permanent, and there was not a formal sort of, a process for approval. What they did was basically build it first, brought the authorities there, and they thought that they'd be okay with it, and they're sort of okay with it. So, so it's still there. And so this is a cultural center with a bookstore inside and some gallery space. And these appendages and vehicles allowed this cultural center to take some of their programming and bring them to other locations. So we thought that it was important that you could project culture in this way, rather than always expecting people to come to one location. And also the People's Canopy here allowed us to expand out to have this sort of meeting space, but then can detach and go to other locations and again be used for gatherings and events. This is a more recent project. Actually hasn't been formally photographed yet, but this is a collection of a lot of different small projects that we did. This is a plan here, and this is the entrance, and I'll go through all these little projects. So they're sort of the scale of an intervention, but brought together in this public park. So this is a kind of a canopy structure as the entrance, and then we have these sort of floating roofs that are used for an outdoor bar area, and also some smaller restaurants. There's also a small gallery space here. We did some neat things with the roof. And this is obviously a public restroom. The idea was to have a restroom that would allow people to sort of do your thing all together, but still have privacy. We thought this is the right time to have a sort of a gender neutral design for this. And you have this kind of Ronchamp-like light well above where you're doing your thing. And then next to that, we have this kind of tower that it was supposed to be kind of like a 3D yoga tower thing. Not really sure, but you can go up and see some nice views. And again, we have more pipes. Playing around with some different things, and kids will be sliding through this. And there's actually there's kind of a neat mountain peak somewhere over here that looks like a face looking upwards. And so when you look into these periscopes, you can see that. And with all these kind of smaller projects and our interests, we started thinking, we really should probably make some money and be more like architects, but we're trying to think of how we would do that. And so we designed this kind of a kit that we're interested in designing spaces for learning in schools. So what we wanted to do is to really understand a bit more about how space affects learning. So this kit incorporates a lot of these designs that we did for these different installations and interventions. And what we did was we brought this to, we made it possible to have lots of different variations, and we can always change this, and brought this to different schools, and mostly for early educators. So this is a preschool, and we worked with researchers and educators to kind of play around with how we can manipulate these spaces, or how kids can manipulate these spaces to improve their learning. And it's really interesting. This is called a learning loft, and we wanted to provide an upper space and a lower space so that you could have, so the kids can feel, empowered. But you also see different power dynamics in between, who controls the access and not. Also, how kids can collaborate together. They often feel more confidence when the space is more manageable for them and of their scale. You can see how kids will behave differently when they are above or below or outside and whatnot. And also, naturally, we'll find ways of using space that we didn't expect. So this is some kids put on some these capes for a dramatic play. And also the teachers would then interview these kids. They're too young to write, but the teachers will then jot down some input from the students, what they were thinking and imagining, and some of their drawings. I don't know about Pattaya, but I didn't have any kids that drew pitched roofs actually, and it was kind of interesting to see what their ideas for home or house might be. And all the the different views. I mean, they do have this kind of a window here, and they were thinking of flags, and some were very obsessed with the space above, and different plan views. But to have this kind of input was pretty helpful for us to open our minds in terms of how we can better design space for learning and exploring. So we also did, so the earlier images were of schools in the US, but we also did this in China, and actually at a kindergarten that I'll show later that we were working on a design to renovate and expand. But we also put these in some of our exhibitions. This was a solo exhibition at Design Society that I showed earlier. But we had activities and workshops with kids and parents, and yeah, did this in quite a few places. And also during COVID, I was really depressed and frustrated and trapped in our tiny apartment. You see, I started making lamps and things like that, and eventually I came up with the idea to also build a loft for my own kids. So these are my 3 kids, and this was actually very helpful to help me sort of manage them. I mean, they in the loft space, they felt calmer, and it was kind of, had ownership over this place. They were, we turned things into swings and things like that. We had our own indoor playground. But this actually helped me manage some of my time during COVID. You can see my tiny little desk here. That was my office. We did end up getting some school projects. This is a kindergarten outside of Beijing, in a rural area, and these are all sort of low-income families in this location. And everything you see with the red roof is original. And what we did was we built some additional spaces and also linked all these buildings together into a more united campus. And this is so this is a view of the interior of that ring, and you can see this is a very flexible space. It's a really fantastic space for kids, and it's very there's a lot of activity that happens here. They'll have kind of like a fake marketplace, and they're also playing with music here and so on. We took a lot of these ideas from our learning lofts and integrated them into how we designed a lot of these spaces in terms of the scale and how they would engage. We integrated landscaping into our designs as also another way for students to explore and learn. And our lofts really relied on a kind of experience-based or project-based approach to learning. And in this kindergarten, we were able to also integrate those ideas into the way we designed the space. You see, it was quite important for students to be able to also display their work. It's important to be able to see all the different options you have for different creative tools, and then also plenty of space to actually be creative. And that central area is also certainly very important, and we designed it as also a landscape for playing, as well as learning and athletics. So another project we did is a bit larger. It's about 25,000 square meters. This is a primary school in Shenzhen called Fuqiang Xiaoxue. And this school started off as, this is also a renovation and addition. The original school was sort of this shape, so that's kind of this area right here. Sort of the original school was an L shape with a track on the side here. So we dismantled the original gym and then moved the track and kind of connected the building in a loop and extended it out and put a lot of program under these bars that we extended out. What we're trying to achieve here was to find a way to create more possibilities for connections and interactions between all these different spaces you have in these schools. Now, this is a public school, so the curriculum is pretty rigid, very standardized in China. So we had to find these opportunities in sort of creative ways. You can see we are trying to make connections between the multi-purpose room and the gym here, and from above and below and through different terraces, so you have diagonal sight lines. And these are some images of the actual interior. So there's actually a window behind the theater. This is the gymnasium where you can see the theater, and up here you have the library. Unfortunately, we didn't get the contract for the interior, so it wasn't ideal. But I think a lot of the areas turned out quite nice. We also provided a lot of ways of accessing all the different levels, and certainly made use of the rooftop, as we did with the kindergarten, as creating a landscape for learning, and also a lot of green walls for sunshade. And also, we designed the facade so that what I wanted was a facade where the activity of the school was the facade itself, and so designed it so that it could be occupiable. And again, having a lot of these areas that allowed for informal learning. So these days, it's important to provide a lot of these spaces where it's not clearly programmed, right? I mean, you have circulation space, but you can provide a little bit more room, some nooks and crannies for kids to work together in teams. Sometimes it's important to have your own space, to have a little bit of alone time, and we were also really happy to see that these different levels and layers of the school still really did provide connections, opportunities for connection. Really wasn't sure how that would work. And also the schools are, the regulations for public schools are require that all classrooms face a certain direction and so on and so forth. There are a lot of restrictions. But with special classrooms, they were a little bit more loose. So we put a lot of these special classrooms at the ends of these bars that extend out. And those were the spaces that actually we thought were more interesting, because you have your music classes, your art classes, dance classes in these locations. And so you can see from here, you could be outside waiting for a bus and be able to see some of the creative energy that is happening in this school, projected outwards and celebrated in this location. Yeah, and the layering of all these different activities here, I think, is also pretty clear. And the last school project I'm going to show is one that we won through a competition, which is incredible because it's so hard to win these competitions. I don't know how Jojinan does this, but it's hard. But this competition, our idea was to bring, there's a very large park just to the north of this project, and the idea was to bring that into the building and integrate it with terraces and the roofscape. And then this idea of this learning landscape would also extend downwards continuously into the lower levels in the basement, and also breaking down a lot of the barriers between indoors and outdoors. This is all these last two projects are all in Shenzhen, so the weather allows you to do that, and I think that makes it more possible for students to experiment and explore. For example, you can just roll a table out and do things with water and not worry about how dirty it gets. You can see these are some of those classrooms, and also integrating a lot of nature into these spaces. This is the library, which is right here, and again, separating all these levels so that you can have this sort of continuous open space. The classrooms. Not only, those are the special classrooms that can open up, and these standard classrooms, what we did was we also wanted to make it more possible for students to use both sides of the classroom. Maybe teachers can sometimes take the class into the outdoor circulation areas. So we created these different counter levels with large sliding windows, and also integrated some of the storage into here. And some of the form of the landscape would also be occupiable for students, similar to our previous project. So this project will be finished in 2024, and we're just starting the foundation for this. Actually, I have a couple more schools, but they're small ones. So during COVID, I think some people might have seen this hospital that was built in Wuhan, and it was like a week or something like that. And we actually at the same time, we're using that system to build schools. So these are some of these modular prefabricated schools that we did. This is another one. It was really interesting because this school was built in a location that was not planned for a building. And so it's a very tight space. And we were able to finish the school in a very short amount of time. And Shenzhen is a city that's growing rapidly. The population is growing rapidly, and there's a real shortage of schools, and this was one way to deal with that. Now, the rest of these projects are sort of within I kind of see it as one project, actually. We call these our plug-in projects. And so this is similar to Lu Yuchun, part of a larger project to upgrade certain areas in these different cities. This is in Beijing. And in Beijing, in these this is actually in the same neighborhood where you saw the video where my office is. This is called Dashilar, near Tianmen. And you have a lot of these wonderful old courtyard houses, but the area is quite run down. There's a lot of informal building. There's no sewage in these areas. There are only public bathrooms. And a lot of these areas are disappearing because the approach that people are using is to really raise these areas, install the infrastructure, and then rebuild. And usually, there's a lot of people that have to be relocated. So there's an open call out for alternatives to this approach, and so what we suggested was to build a house in a house. And so that is, instead of, without doing anything to the original structure, without relocating anyone, we build a new house inside an old house. So this is actually a section of the first one that we did. So you can see from the before and after images, The original structure is left untouched. This neighborhood is also really interesting because it's such a central location in Beijing, so very valuable in many different ways. But there are a lot of vacancies just because the conditions are so poor. But the vacancies are not. It's not as if you have full properties that are entirely vacant. They're all subdivided all into little properties that are vacant. So it's not easy to do anything with these spaces. And with our approach, we use this prefabricated system that's a panelized system that allowed us to build these plugins very quickly with a low cost, and we were able to upgrade the conditions quite fast. And the system allowed us to customize fairly easily. So this is to show all the different floor plans of different plugins that we did in this community. But we also got our hands dirty. I mean, we're also coming up with different ways of dealing with sewage. So this we would install septic tanks. These are composting toilets that we do the shipping ourselves. This is one of my designers. And so this is integrated into our designs. And during this process, actually the first one that we designed, this, really it was a demonstration. You can see residents kind of looking at this project and thinking, wow, what's going on here? Doesn't make any sense. This is Mrs. Dong, the neighbor of one of our first plug-in house. But then eventually she started getting involved, and then that winter she walked into one of these spaces that we renovated, and she was like, "Oh my gosh, this is incredible! This is very warm here." She can tell that the quality is very, very high, and so she became the first resident to try this out. So this is actually everything that she owns. She moved this out. We installed the plug-in, and then she moved their stuff in. And they really care about that because there have been a lot of people have had really bad experiences of being promised that if they move out, then things will be renovated and they can go back, but finding out later on that you can't go back. So they're very nervous about that. So this was a really good way to ensure her that that wouldn't happen. So this is actually her house. She lives here. It's only about 15 square meters or something like that. Lives here with her son, who's mentally disabled, and this is a before and after image. And a couple of shots of my office. Similar to Lu Chun, we decided to move our office. We were also in another Hutong area in a courtyard house, but we decided to move here to be closer to this work. And it was interesting how word spread. We got a lot of attention from international media and different news outlets, but actually it was the local newspapers that were really important. And we'd have all these people come over and say, "Hey, is this your project? I want one of these. I just live over there." So we had quite a few people do this, and yeah, it turned out that it was really the local community and how word spread that way was most helpful for us. And we've also taken this to other locations. This is in an urban village in Shenzhen, which is a pretty different context, but a similar situation with a lot of these rundown buildings. You can see this is how quick we can build these units. And some of these areas is really interesting to find similar situations, but for different reasons, why these weren't torn down, why people aren't living in them. There are just a lot of these kind of pockets of areas where, there's just property that people just don't know how, there's no way that they can think of to use it. And so we try to be creative with how you do that. A more recent project is this one in Jingdezhen, which is the kind of the ceramics capital of China. All the Imperial ceramics were done here. So this is a really important location with lots of history. And so we had a whole lot of these properties that our client was interested in upgrading, and these would be these originally were pottery ceramics studios, and they're upgraded to also continue their use as ceramic studios. And these are actually just, these have not been professionally photographed, and some of these are actually just from yesterday. But you can see that this is a system that we were able to adapt to very, very different contexts. And we also had an opportunity to design some of the other buildings in this location. This is an art center and gallery space here with some nice areas. And so this kind of house-in-house plug-in was, one type of this use, but then also we had residents that came to us that asked for just independent houses that were not inside another building. So this is Mrs. Fan, and she was the first person to come to us to ask for this. So I'll have her talk about this project.
我从小在这个院子长大的，从小学1年级开始吧，一直到高中，一直生活在这个大杂院里面，对这个院子有很多特别美好的回忆。高2的时候吧，我父母在辅石路那边又买了一套楼房。我不太喜欢住楼房，首先那一道门就感觉把你们两家就给隔阂出来了。但是这个平房吧就不一样，那么窄的一胡同，每天大家都是抬头不见低头见的，点一下头，哈个腰，微笑一下，很小的动作，大家就心领神会了。妈妈不太想让我再回这边来住，他们觉得你们俩都成家了也应该自己买一套房子。但是我是觉得我有这么一套房子是我自己的，我完完全全可以重新打造一下，变成一个我自己喜欢的小屋。周围的邻居也过来参观，盖的过程中大家都可能会比较好奇吧，因为之前都是那种砌砖式的，像这个是那种内合板，它是一个整体搭建过来的。盖完了以后，他们会觉得这小房子弄得挺新颖的，很不错。如果设计成这样，没有人不愿意回来吧。我跟我母亲多少都会有叫什么密闭忧郁症啊，就是我们不能在一个特别封闭的空间里待着。之前的房子非常的暗，那个时候进到这个屋子，你几乎分不清楚是白天还是晚上，没有采光。现在就是完全不一样，敞亮度、明亮度各个方面就会觉得很舒服。我很喜欢阳光普照在身上的那种感觉，就会很温暖。我觉得堆肥马桶呢，既解决了让自己在屋里可以方便，又不会破坏环境，所以我觉得国外做得非常好，应该在国内进行推广。空间有限嘛，有一个小的露台，夏天你可以晒晒被子，可以布置成一小花园，头顶就是蓝天，环境又好又惬意。现在写字楼啊都是在城里嘛，买一套房子不是说挺贵，真的很贵。改造这个平房，总的来说是比买房子要压力小很多很多。之前每天工作往返都要4个小时，但是现在往返的路程就1个小时，这样我每天可以节省很多时间，不用花在路上。我可能比人早走一步，更快地接受了一下这种新鲜的事物。但是我觉得就是因为会有人首先接受新事物，大家应该都会更向往这种生活，也希望自己的居住条件变得更好吧。
Yeah, so with each client for these plug-in houses, we worked very closely with them to figure out the design, and the shape was worked out based on what the neighbors required. There was no regulation or anything like that. We just couldn't block people's views, so that's what ended up being the shape of these houses. So we built a whole bunch of these, but also it was really not possible to support an architecture practice this way. So we started thinking of how we could turn this into more of a real product that was economically sustainable. So I had a chance to, it was a time when I was transitioning back to the US. I was at Harvard as a Loeb Fellow, and I had a year to kind of explore. And one of the things I did was to bring a plug-in house to the university. And what I wanted to try to do is to also see how easy it would be to build this with just volunteer labor. So this is actually how these panels arrived. It's a panelized system, and in the panels is a lock that's integrated into the material itself. So this is the technical name is a structural insulated panel, but this is only this is a particular type that only we make. And with one tool, with a hex wrench, you can turn these locks, and these locks have a cam inside and pulls everything tight. All you need is that one tool and some scaffolding, a ladder, and a few people, and you're able to build this. So this is this was in the middle of campus at Harvard Yard, and we had volunteer students with the architects, but no experience in building. And we were able to do this very quickly, and also activated this space with a lot of events and activities, book readings and dance and so on and so forth. During that time, it was also interesting to see a lot of cities interested in what they call accessory dwelling units. So these are basically backyard houses that cities wanted to encourage people to build as a way to increase the housing stock. And because usually these would be smaller units, they could be used for, the rents would be lower, and you wouldn't have to find land, right? You can build these in very valuable locations where there's only private land available. So the city of Boston was interested in pushing this policy, and so the mayor's Housing Innovation Lab became a partner to also demonstrate the plug-in house. And we built this in front of, this is the Boston City Hall right here. And we had meetings with community leaders and policymakers, collecting information from visitors about their thoughts on this policy. And it was really helpful for them to be able to actually come in and see what a space like this would be like. And it really helped them imagine how this could be in their neighborhood or in their own backyard, and how they could use this for their college-age kids or for their aging parents. And it made this discussion about this sort of new approach to housing and this policy less abstract, right, and easier to understand. And so through these events, I actually met a new partner. This is Anmol, and he was a fellow at the Kennedy Center, also at the university. He's also a developer of affordable housing, and we got together and decided to spin off a company in partnership with People's Architecture Office to be dedicated to developing this product. So our company is called Plug-in House, and this is and we only do this. This is not a design company, but it's a product company. And so here I'm trying to be an entrepreneur, because you really needed to find a way to, well, we didn't want to waste all this work, and wanted to find a way to keep going and survive. So part of what we had to do was to do a whole lot of testing. So this is all structural testing, and all this stuff is very expensive, and fire testing, and it's in order to get through all the approvals. Here we are sort of formalizing all this sort of informal work that we've been doing. We actually need to get data that engineers can then do calculations and educate regulators. And we're also intimately involved with the manufacturing of these panels. This is one of these large molds that come in, and we use to. This is actually an injection process to manufacture these panels. And also, every single building that we produce is built twice. So it's built in the factory first, to make sure everything works and there are no problems with them. and then we knock them down, we pack them up, and then we ship them to their final location. We have different models of different sizes. It's somewhat customizable, right? You can imagine if you add just a few more panels, you would have an extra bathroom or bedroom. And we started off doing some demonstrations that are also accessory dwelling units. So you see this is the main house, and this is the backyard. It's a corner lot, so there's a little bit more space, but this is kind of the setup that you would normally see in this situation. Now, through some of these demonstrations, we also met this amazing organization called the Other Ones Foundation. And this is the last project I'll show. And so this nonprofit manages, I believe it's actually the largest homeless encampment in the US, and this is in Austin, Texas. And so this was the site when they first came in. I mean, the city was just dumping people here, not doing much at all to improve or support the people here. And this is how it is currently. So part of our work was to help them figure out how to create these community gathering spaces. So we proposed these Quonset huts, which is an existing system, but I think very appropriate, and it's also prefabricated and panelized. So we have these large gathering spaces where they'll have activities and events, and also distribute foods and things that people need. We also designed a bunch of units for this organization. Now, we didn't come in early enough to do their housing. There's on this phase, there's 100 houses that are being built. We came in after they already found a vendor for that, but what we're building are community support spaces. So these are libraries, food distribution spaces, spaces for caseworkers. So these are the wraparound services that are actually crucial for a community like this to do well. And also, I took the previous experience we had in Boston, and we also were able to build these with residents of this community. So these are all people that were formerly homeless, and actually an important part of the work that this organization does is to also train and to employ people, right? I mean, just having shelter is not enough. You need people to have ways to rebuild their lives. And so building the plug-in houses was a way for them to also get a new type of training and also to have employment. So they're literally building their own community. So these are some, the work in progress images. And you can actually see they've tried every kind of prefab, modular, 3D printed, whatever, all the different types of buildings that are out there, all the different kinds of products. This is from IKEA, done for UNHDP for refugee housing, that they actually hate, but they have a lot of these. This is called pallet shelter, which is actually right now very it's used quite a lot by cities in the U.S., but they also don't like those. So we're in the process of demonstrating and showing how ours are just much better. I mean, we are building these at the quality of any house. Actually, the insulation is better than most buildings, most houses. It's rigid polyurethane insulation. Completely sealed, and we have heating, cooling, mini split units in here. Electrical is integrated into the panels, and we can also offer a lot of different variations and designs. This is a duplex unit with 2 separate spaces that people can use for offices. This one is for food distribution, and it's under those Quonset huts. So this is still work in progress. It's not finished yet. They're still, building the other units. But I'm excited for the moment when this is fully in use and people are gathering here and having a good time. And that's my presentation.
Thank you, James.